You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome, everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It is Thursday, January 15th, 2026. It is 7:35 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I would just like to say that the events that are happening in Minneapolis, I've been paying some attention to, and it's quite disturbing to me. And I think that we need to pay attention to it, and that it may be past the point where uh, uh, simple involvement in it is adequate, and that we might need to begin a more active resistance to this. And so what I would recommend people do is check out these groups of rapid response and see if you can align yourself, or at least get connected to these networks, so that we can have some agency in the things that are happening. Obviously, we'll have to make a decision about how involved we're going to get. But if you're witnessing and alerting people who are able to interrupt, I don't think we can be passive at this point. We really are going to have to get into a position of actively engaging this and actively interrupting it, or it's going to roll over us. And I think the strategy really is to prevent the midterm elections, which we really need to have. Without them, it's going to be, I would say, bad in defining it. But the imagery that coming out of there is horrific and reminds me of Kent State and how that shut everything down. And I don't think that we have an option this time. We need to respond to this. So I would urge you to do that. And I know I don't talk about politics here particularly because what we're talking about here is meditation to relieve suffering, and through that attachment lens, working with our conditioning. But I just think that it's taken a turn, and we need to pay attention to it. That being said, tonight's topic is when love feels foreign. Dyslexia strikes again. Do you know with dyslexia that the mind needs to remember the pronunciation of a word, that you're not able to sound it out? And then sometimes you can say a word and you can say it 50 times perfectly, and then all of a sudden you can't say it at all. And it's surprising to you, the dyslexic speaker, when that happens. And it is actually the main source of why people think you're stupid. All through my childhood, people thought I was stupid because I couldn't pronounce ordinary words. And it wasn't until much later that I figured out that the reason I can't pronounce ordinary words, that is to say, some of the time I can and some of the time I can't, is because of the joy of a dyslexic mind. It has such advantages in some ways that I don't mind it. But I should be able to say repatterning. So when love feels foreign, repatterning the body to receive care. It's an interesting thing. The way that we regard our own body, right? How we look at it, and whether we think that it's beautiful or not, and how we look at other bodies and whether we think they're beautiful or not. And when you're in that not particularly mentalizing well scheme of things, you could even think that your interpretation of what what is beautiful is a universal conception. Have you ever been to France? You know, they put a bust of a woman in all of the post offices that define the era of beauty, female beauty. This is France is the thing, and every 10 years they put a different bust in so that the conception of beauty changes. There's no male bust. It's hilariously. um, I am actually old enough to have remembered the transition of male beauty being, in some ways, made equivalent to female beauty. Before that, it wasn't really like that. And then the advent of the male model and all the rest of it that happened. Um, we all, each time we walk into a room, we survey the people that are there, and we create a social hierarchy. It's part of the attachment system. And then we peg ourselves where we think we fit into the social hierarchy that we've created in our mind. And we often do it on visual looks, not always, of course, but a lot of the time. There are other things. Social status is one. The resources is another. And then, of course, people relate to you. And we operate in the sense of who we are and how desirable we might be on a modeling that starts way before any of that happens. In that conception of the caregiver looking at us and reflecting back to us what their experience of us is. And if they reflected back to us this sense of that we're beautiful, then we begin to construct a sense of self based on being beautiful. And if they reflect back to us something else, we create a working model of ourselves that's based on that. You may have had the experience in life of operating with people who you find quite beautiful, who don't have much of a sense of that themselves because of that experience. And then there's the physicalness of bodies, right? In the experience of touch that you received as a child. One of the things that happens in attachment conditioning that affects this so greatly is neglect, right? And so what you'll notice in adults who were neglected as children, that is to say that there was a deficit of actual physical care for them, the holding of them, the accepting of the requests for physical closeness, the skin, the early skin to skin contact. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, none of us remember what that early experience was like. But infants are so dependent on skin to skin contact and holding. How much of that did you receive, or how little of it did you receive, which completely affects the way that you relate to physical touch and closeness of bodies. And then when you get into the adult realm of these things, the way in which you relate to sex and the sexual closeness that comes from that. One of, we can actually feel so badly about it that we don't even examine it really. We can't even engage somebody else and explore all of that physicality with someone else because of that early conditioning. And so then the question is, how do you repattern that, right? How do you repattern that? How does that change? A lot of times, what we do is we're adaptive to it. So for instance, we limit sexual positioning or sexual experiences so that it doesn't confront us with the difficulty that we have to it, or we limit uh, physical touch as a way of regulating the distress of it. Um, how do you know love? How do you know if somebody loves you? How do you figure that out? Is it that expression? How does your body settle when it's activated, when you can't regulate your own emotions, uh, if there's no touch involved in it? If you can't form relationships that are intimate and close, how do you integrate the experience of touch in that? And one of the ways that people do it is by impersonal engagement in sex expressions, you know, seeking safety in a sense by limiting risk. Um, One of the things that happens to people that are challenged in this is that they get really good at living alone. They get really good at living without touch. They figure out what's stimulating, and they assiduously organize their life so that they're not in contact to it, so that it doesn't arise, and they don't have that experience of the sadness of it, which is hard to explain, particularly in the way that all of that kind of experience is marketed in our culture as if it's the next best great thing, right? Yeah, all of those kinds of expressions. The ease of it, the ease of it. Um, so this is actually kind of a tough nut to crack. So that I think that it's good to understand the challenging nature of this, so that you can be very easy about it. Um, the the slowness that's necessary to allow a kind of touching that the body doesn't react to in a negative way, and allowing it to settle. And then the moving into greater and greater touching. Of course, we have the whole cultural thing about, which is, in some ways homophobic. Um, the wishbone hug, which is, the straight male thing, which is 2 inches of the shoulder connecting to 2 inches of the other person's shoulder in a wishbone shape, so that the genitals are as far apart as humanly possible in that moment. I think that the response within women is less, but probably not that much less. And what is it that actually causes a body to settle, which is chest to chest, belly to belly? Who do you know that you feel comfortable enough with, that that's actually what you can do, and hold it long enough so that the body mind begins to settle? How long is long enough, you might ask? 20 seconds. Do you know somebody that you can go belly to belly with and hold on to for 20 seconds without the discomfort of being too close arising? Um, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I used to, when everybody wore wristwatches, makes one person hold up the watch so that they could count the 20 seconds and hold on for that period of time. But maybe now you can hold up your phone and just allow that. Notice that settling that begins to happen at 20 seconds and go into 30 seconds of just allowing that physicality. We have such unrealistic, beauty standards, I would think, at least when I compare myself to them, I'm so far off from whatever that is, and have always been that far off. I mean, I've never uh, the now. Why would you want to do that, right? You finally figured out that you can get away with never having physical contact with anyone ever. And this is one of the great achievements of your life. Why would you want to undo all of that hard work that you've done to get there? Because it's a body that you live in, and the body, if you can have that kind of connection, settles, and that settling uh, produces a sense of peace. And that sense of peace actually allows the space of creative exploration, in some sense, to open. That space that's so important opens between people. If we don't have that sense of being protected by other people, then we're vigilant about the environment, and that vigil that we have, that hyper alertness to the environment, prevents the creative space from opening, the creative exploring space from opening. If we don't have that social network that we're at ease with, that we can settle into, that we have the confidence that they're not going to abandon us. That's really the confidence that we're talking about. That we can just settle in. We can be authentically ourselves without having to censor or spin who we are. And we can be unguarded in the expression of that, with the expectation that whatever expression we make will be acceptable. Actually, ideally, that it will be a source of delight for the other person. That our point of view, our take on things, our our perspective on things is delightful to someone else. That's actually who we're looking for. That it's helpful to them. You know, at the basis of close relationships, of useful relationships for exploration, is the capacity to regulate each other. And this is an automatic, unconscious process where the two bodies, your two bodies, being in proximity to each other, have a regulating effect. There's no way around that, really. Two bodies close together, touching, regulating, whether it's sexual or not. And then the interest in having that available to you, that then is the energy that you use to take care of the other person, and finding someone who you enjoy providing that care, that you enjoy doing the things that you need to do so that they feel well taken care of. You take care of them in the way that they need to be taken care of, and they take care of you in the way you need to be taken care of. And so you're both very well taken care of, right? Then you're free to go explore. And off you go and explore the stuff that you need to explore. Then you come rushing back, because part of that integration of the exploration experience is telling somebody what you found out so that you can make sense of it enough to be able to express it. It's a vital stage in that. And you have somebody then that receives that and is delighted in you telling them that. And the main reason that people are delighted by that is because they can use it in their own exploration. And then they go off and explore and come rushing back and tell you the things that they've found out and you're interested in it really because you can also use what they find out. And because it's a different perspective than your own, you actually have a depth of understanding that you wouldn't have if you relied only on your perspective. Is that making sense? And then, of course, it's the exploration that carries you, and that synergy between explorations is the thing that carries relationships for a long period of time. And there isn't a problem with the changing and growing of perspective because each perspective is changing and growing, but the perspectives remain useful to each other. One of the things that happens over the course of a life, if you don't explore enough, is I like to call it the creeping despair. It sort of seeps up out of the floorboards and grabs hold of your ankles. But uh, the way that we mostly experience it is a bitterness about life not having provided enough for us, or not having had the opportunities, or not having been able to get enough of the things that you need to have happen to happen. And the bitterness is often accompanied by a kind of blaming, depending on whether you're oriented to blame yourself or you're oriented to blame other people. There's this accusation. You didn't do enough, or they prevented you, or however it manifests. We could map that onto attachment conditioning, of course. Um, the unfairness of all of this, of course. Secure people tend to be oriented toward primary exploration. They see the value of it and they make resources for it. And they're able to form reliable relationships, and they have the point of view that people are going to want to be in relationship to them. And they have the capacity to delight and the capacity to explore. And they have an openness to themselves so they can understand what matters to them. And then they tend to be able to uh, moderate all of that pretty well out of the gate with no big interventions. Uh, and then as you move away from that security with features or avoidance or preoccupation into disorganization, there's less and less of that. Disorganized people are really the ones that withdraw from everybody and live in social isolation. The one of the reasons for that is the mentalizing is lower in disorganized people, and emotional regulation is harder for disorganized people. And there's a dissociative component that organized people don't really have, which makes uh, functioning in life much harder. And mainly because disorganization is caused by trauma. And in the attachment world, what we mean by trauma is a high bar. It's not like a colloquial kind of use of the word trauma, which we have now. You know, physical, emotional, sexual violence of some kind, which undermines the confidence that you have in being able to discern who to be involved with. One of the things that drives the need for relationships, particularly when you're younger, is loneliness, right? You're lonely, and so you're propelled out into the world to discover someone who you can connect to relieve you of the loneliness. And if you keep picking people that where the relationships don't work very well, or you invite into your world somebody who actually harms you again, it undermines already low self confidence in being able to pick well who it is. And at a certain point, those kinds of relationships are so disruptive to a life, you just decide not to do it anymore. You'll have a life that's more stable, that actually feels better, even if it doesn't include a lot of people or people that are close, because the risk of bringing in somebody who completely disrupts everything isn't worth it. And you make the decision to withdraw from relationships. And so you spend a lot of time alone. And then this is a category, it seems to happen in people's early to mid 30s that they make a decision to withdraw. It does also correspond to the shrinking of your social network. When you're a kid, you're in school, you have a wide social network, even if you don't participate in it. In your 20s, everybody's out trying to make something happen. But by the time you get into your 30s, people are obligated more. Certainly, all of the secure people are gone because they found somebody connected and settled. Did you ever notice dating in your 40s or 50s? It's all dismissing people, or at least 7 out of 10 of them are dismissing because they don't form relationships that last. So you're one after another. And with the horror, can we call it the horror of online dating? Remember when we used to have clubs and social groups, and you'd meet people by joining something, and how that fragmentation of our culture has changed to now. You look at some complete misrepresentation of somebody online. Yeah. Hours and hours and hours of time spent getting to the first meet, and then in 5 minutes it's not going to work out. Whereas if you just gone and met them in person, you would have known that in 5 minutes and not had to spend the hours of connection time.
It's backwards.
Yeah. It's funny that it says in the chat, I met my husband the old-fashioned way at a bar. Of course, you have to be a drinker in order for that to happen, right? uh, in organized, insecure relationships, dismissing and preoccupied relationships, of course, there's a pattern of connection. We're talking about the physicality of the body. Disorganized people are often dissociated from the body. It's hard for them to get embodied, to feel in the body. I remember when I was a kid and everybody was talking about astral projection and getting out of the body and, traveling in the universe. I said, actually, I kind of like to figure out how to get into the body. I've been out of the body my whole life. How do you get into the body? Hilariously. And dismissing and preoccupied people have a different relationship to the body. The preoccupied person trades the body for physical closeness. So closeness to the body is in some sense a trade for the closeness, the emotional closeness, or often a substitute for that. Dismissing people are the ones that are the most neglected, and so they have the hardest time with closeness in the body. They really don't like it. It doesn't feel comfortable to them. They have a hard time with the smells of the body, and so they tend to prefer strategies that limit the way in which the bodies connect, and they certainly don't want the frontal belly to belly, chest to chest contact. It's too intrusive, too claustrophobic. for there's a uh, particularly in the intensity of smell that can happen in bodies. So part of this is, of course, not a universal solution or something easy that we could just say, do this. It is really going to be linked up to your conditioning and what happened. But we do have these categories of experience that we can then that suggest different ways of approaching it. The in the dismissing preoccupied word, where the preoccupied person wishes that physical proximity, which gives closeness but also settles their nervous system, they typically pick dismissing people who can't deal with that level of physical contact, and so it's regulated by the dismissing person. But the conundrum of the slowness with which dismissing people need to acclimatize to physical touch is overwhelmed by the need for proximity in the preoccupied person. So the preoccupied person really does have to slow down a huge amount and allow the space for the dismissing person to begin to get close. That's Christian has his hands up in this sensitive moment.
George, if you're in a relation, an avoidant person, would it help to take like 4 or 5 showers a day?
It can if smell is a big issue for them. Which it can be. And or if they're germophobic, which is often the case.
Actually, is like OCD, like, is that something that's like really a dismissive kind of trait, or?
Yeah, it's highly correlated with that. The anxiety of the intrusion, the demanding, well, physical touch is a demand, it's an intrusion, it's the demand is for intimacy, right? Personal intimacy. And so you'll often find that dismissing people prefer impersonal sexual positions, without getting too graphic, from behind or from the back rather than face to face, because that belly to belly, chest to chest, eye to eye, that within a foot of somebody's face, if you look into their eyes, there's no way that you can defend yourself from the eyes expressing what's actually going on with you. Whereas if you keep a wider distance, you can deflect or manage the perception of what's going on. That proximity, at about 6 feet, the human eye doesn't really resolve facial expressions well enough to have an in-depth understanding of what's going on emotionally with somebody. So that tends to be the preferred distance. At 3 feet, 3 feet away, you can begin to recognize micro expressions in people. What do we do in order to not have our micro expressions recognized? We learn to suppress them. Most of us who live in larger social groups can completely flatten the micro expressions. It's only in an unguarded moment that it escapes and registers and people can read it. But if you let somebody get a foot away from you, who do you let get a foot away from you? Can you count them on your fingers of one hand? And do you notice there's that surge of emotion that comes up as people get closer and closer to you? And if they're right in front of your face, there's often a big surge of energy. So that pacing is really important, and the allowing of it, and allowing if you have trouble being touched, that peak of resistance and fearfulness that comes from it, and then allowing that to settle long enough that there's then a comfort that comes from it, and then acclimatizing uh, to the physicalness of the body, the smell of the body, the connection to the body. One of the things that's, you know, in our promiscuous world that we live in, there's a lot of, or it's possible to have connections with people that aren't particularly known to you well. And so um, I would not recommend that if you want to open up and prepare the capacity to be touched, because it's too easy to slip into a role in those kinds of encounters and not actually touch into the intimate place that you need to in order to repair that capacity to be touched. In some sense, you're overriding uh, the the that early conditioning, which you can't do if you don't have confidence in the person that you're engaging with to reveal yourself in an authentic way, which you can't really do with people that you don't know well enough because there isn't that confidence. It takes time to develop it. You may notice a certain freedom in uh, um, early in relationships with physical touch, but as soon as there's a dependency on them or a desire for dependency on them, it shuts down again. The particularly for dismissing people who anticipate rejection as a stance on life. Doesn't matter if you don't care about the other person, whether they reject you or not, or you have some kind of power over them. It's only when they begin to matter to you that it becomes problematic. And that's actually the space that we're talking about preparing, that space of and a lot of people have a split where they can be physically, sexually intimate with somebody, but not emotionally intimate. Or they can be emotionally intimate with somebody, but they can't be physically or sexually intimate with someone. And if you want to engage in a primary relationship that's also sexual, you need to be able to risk all of that. And then, you know, in the role-based world, masculinity is defined essentially as not feminine. Everything that's left that isn't feminine is masculine. It's such a reductive way, and we aren't like that really. We have aspects of masculine and feminine, besides which the things that are categorized as masculine or feminine are empty in the Buddhist sense. There's nothing intrinsically masculine or feminine about most of these uh, 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 um, representations that we've defined in that way. They're culturally defined. Can't we be free then to be completely authentic in our expression to somebody else, confident that they're going to be delighted that we let them know who we are? How's that? Why don't we do some? Hmm?
So you're saying we should be with someone have sex with someone, but only 6 foot away for safety.
Right, exactly. Depending on your endowment, it might be closer. Uh,
I was just writing, George. I mean, it sounds a little bit hopeless unless I missed the I missed
the hope part.
the hope part. Yeah, yeah. As far as, if we can't, if we're sort of we got these patterns from childhood and then we can't get close, or we have these struggles, so we choose not to get close to people, then, is it the methods of, IPF and meditation that you teach in general, are those the same kinds of approaches that are going to help with this aspect in particular?
I think that IPF really helps, and it helps in a couple of ways. We have ideal parent figure protocol, ideal partner work that you can do in the visualization, where you begin to actually allow yourself to understand who it is that you want and what kind of relationship that you want. And in visualizing that, what tends to come out in the beginning is the conditioned patterns that are reflective of your early attachment conditioning. But in the process of that being facilitated, you can begin to shift into more secure functioning, so that you begin to visualize how secure functioning relationships will operate, and including visualizing how intimate, secure sexual relationships will operate in a way that's different than what the original conditioning is. And then there's a process of secure intimacy once you have a sense of who it is that you might like to be with, navigating the social world that you're in, so that if you identify somebody that is the person that you want, that you engage with them. And then in the facilitation of the ideal parent figure, there's visualizing the engagement going well, but also you have a way of reflecting your attachment responses that would get in the way of forming a relationship. So that I think that in the process of shifting from the old pattern of relationship, that if you didn't do any of this work and you didn't have the support as you were beginning to form relationships, it would repeat in the way that it has. But that if you do have that support, you can negotiate successfully a secure functioning relationship in a way that wasn't possible before. There's just ample evidence of people being able to do that. So I would say that it is not hopeful to try again with the same toolkit that you had before. But if you learn a new toolkit, it is totally hopeful to try again and do it in a way that's different. Now, I will say, in my experience of doing this, is that the first attempt out of the gate with the new tools, because there's no confidence that they'll work, they're just tossed aside and you go right back into the same kind of relationship. But it doesn't last as long as the other ones, because you see right away that you've just done it again. So you come out much faster, and then you have a determination to use the new tools in the way that they're meant to be used. And so as you go into it again, the next one goes much better. And then if that isn't the springboard into a longer lasting relationship, the next one after that is. But I do have a sense of people successfully maneuvering into relationships that are really useful. The disorganized crowd is a little bit harder with that. If you haven't learned to live alone, it's easier to get into a relationship than if you have. If you've learned to live alone, it's much harder. So that would be the one caveat I would say. You really have to change your mind about that. And people who've lived for a long time alone are so used to everything being the way they want it. The capacity to compromise and collaborate on so many, and these are just totally ordinary household kinds of things. It's much harder. How's that,
Good. Thanks.
Jeff?
You went away from hope again.
I the rock and hard place, hope and disappointment. I need to tell you about the potential for disappointment because it's a real hope killer, disappointment. And I need you to keep the hope active. And so if I didn't tell you and you were blindsided by disappointment, and you know, some of us have accumulated a vast ocean of disappointment, then it's all bullshit and you lied and I'm not doing this. And I don't want that. Jeff?
Yeah, so what happens is the preoccupied person, it seems he's made their problem is that their glass is always like half empty. Like, how could you make that glass like half full? It would be through a way through IPF that you discussed before, or like how do they make them their glass half full? Like through what tools?
Well, the big challenge for preoccupied people is the beginning of exploring. Preoccupied people really mostly think that if they can find a relationship, they'll find the meaning that they need in the relationship and they won't have to explore. But relationships actually don't provide meaning in that way. They provide support for you to explore, to find meaning. So the conundrum for preoccupied people is that they often enter into relationships that precludes them exploring. And so the dissatisfaction doesn't change much, even if they're engaged in a relationship. And then they can end up using a lot of the resources that they have in supporting the other person in the relationship and feel even a greater sense of deprivation at the end of it. So I would say the thing to begin to do as a preoccupied person is to begin exploring for primary meaning, and then begin to assemble relationships around you that are actually in some way related to primary exploration, and not to head off directly to find somebody whose exploration you can sort of jump on and attempt to feel a sense of satisfaction from.
What's a quick example of that?
Well, what is it that you like to do that in the doing of it provides meaning for you?
I don't know. I think helping people.
So then,
But I don't. Yeah.
how would you find a venue or an avenue where you could begin to help people? We talked about it earlier. The rapid response community is a place. I know we have a lot of soup kitchens in LA because half the population of LA or a third of the population of LA is in poverty, and half the children in LA are in poverty. And so there's a whole network of soup kitchens that help. And then we have a giant homeless population. And so there's also a lot of outreach for the homeless. These are all, the reason they're coming to mind is because I talk to students about the involvement in those. For instance, one of my students belongs to a church group that takes packages of food to the population of people that are inhabiting our drain sewers along the LA River. And it's been a very challenging time because we've had so much rain. They've been displaced from the places that they're living. There is maybe a simpler way to say it is there's an endless need. If helping people is going to be useful for meaning, go find someplace. That would be an example of the beginning.
Right. But I would try to go and maybe like help, like maybe some people in first or second grade, help them, maybe with primary exploration or something like that. But that's only an idea,
Right.
Or is that there's too much involved with that kind of thing?
Well,
Like,
I would say that any kind of organization that it engages with children are going to be pretty protective of them. And so there's going to be a lot of hurdles for that. One of the things about exploration that we have to pay attention to is the resistances that come up. The amount of energy that you have that you can use to engage in exploration is the same energy that you have to use to overcome the resistances. And so as you get skillful at primary exploration, what you also get skillful at is paying attention to the resistances that you allow to get in the way of that energy being used for exploration, because you can easily consume all of the energy dealing with the resistances to doing the exploration and not actually get much in the way of exploration done. So you want to pick something, particularly when it's nascent and beginning, that's not doesn't have a lot of resistances built into it. That makes sense. But and the advantage for preoccupied people who haven't done much exploration is that you can do anything and make the evaluation of is this meaningful for me to do this, or is it not meaningful? Or is there a part of it that's meaningful, and then use that as a springboard to guide you into the next thing that might be meaningful. There isn't, this is a process. We don't really define the goal necessarily. We define the direction of what's next. And then in the discovery of each of those next steps, the direction of what is actually meaningful changes as we move closer to what's authentically important. Makes sense?
it seems like I would have to like remap myself to try to do something like that, because the only thing I could only compare that idea to like SMART goals, whereas that's I guess you would have to include because this is a different approach on doing things.
Well, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't I use SMART goals?
No, why wouldn't you remap yourself?
How would I remap myself?
Pick something and explore it.
Okay, and but I don't know if I feel comfortable helping the homeless. I mean, I helped them with the stimulus checks for the IRS, but I don't know. I'm not that comfortable with them, but I was able to help them.
So then find your path using those experiences as a guide. What I can't do is tell you what to do, because then it's my exploration and not yours. Structurally, it doesn't work. I can talk to you about what you're doing and whether it's meaningful or not, but I can't suggest anything, because then I'm doing it and you're not. And while you could go do it, and you could then in the end tell me one way or the other, and maybe that level of scaffolding is necessary, but in the end, it's not you doing it. And so it's you relying on me to tell you, which I would do, except it's the opposite of what you're asking me to do.
Okay, yeah, so I'll try to work something out.
All right. And then come back and tell us. We'll be excited to know. Shall we do a little bit of practice? What do you think? What do you want to do?
IPF.
IPF, okay.
Wow, I get to choose? I was just throwing it in the hat.
So go ahead and settle in. How's that? Good. So Saturday, that's in 2 days, is the second day of the level 1 that we have going on. And then February 20th, we're starting a new level 2 on Fridays in the morning. What else is happening? We have this new thing, this new lunch gathering thing we're doing. So on January 20th at 1 p.m., we have a workshop. See if I can pull up the topic. That's pretty much everything that's coming up in the immediate.
Is that different from Kaleidoscope, George?
It is, yeah. Kaleidoscope is the 4th Friday of the month. And then, oops, looking for, nope, that's not it. I don't have it handy. Anyway, we just thought that some people on their lunch hour would like to have a quick Dharma meeting, and so we're doing it once a month. And it's the workshop that we used to do on Friday evenings, but we got a lot of suggestions from people that Friday evening is the worst time of the week to do anything because everybody just wants to collapse. So Tuesday at lunch. Anyway, take a look at it. It's up on the website. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope if you can make a donation, you will. It helps support me and also the work Mettagroup is doing. It's good to see you. Appreciate your practice, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.